Hi guys, Sean here, coming to you live from my van. What I want to talk to you about today is the joy of wood carving in small spaces. This has been on my mind a lot recently, both through living in a van and also with the recent coronavirus stuff. I'm currently sitting in a fish camp. I left Canada about a month ago. We went on about a month of our 6-month trip, and we've kind of all ground to a halt because of coronavirus. So I think it's time I talked about myself a little bit more on this channel. Give you guys a bit of backstory. I was originally born in Wellington in New Zealand. 2 years ago I moved to Toronto in Canada, and I moved into a tiny little apartment, 450 square foot. It's a bloody shoebox. So one of the things that I found was coming from New Zealand, where I had a lot of space and a lot of my woodworking was larger projects like guitar building and stuff like that, you know, where power tools were involved, and then transitioning to a smaller space like an apartment, you needed to be a lot more creative with what you were doing. You were a lot more limited with the tools you could use. I mean, I wasn't using power tools, I wasn't able to process up large bits of timber, and I definitely wasn't able to make a lot of dust and mess and noise. So for me with the apartment, wood carving was the answer. It allowed me to continue being creative and continue to work wood, which is things that I wanted to do. I'd done some wood carving before when I was in New Zealand. I made a lot of Maori style pendants, but I'd never really taken on figure carving, and what Canada provided me was an opportunity to have better tools. They were just more readily available, and also better wood. It wasn't as easy to find stuff like basswood in New Zealand. People always complain, oh, I can't find basswood. Where do you find basswood? You do have to look locally, and Canada did make that a lot easier for me. I had always envisioned that I'd film a video while I was in that apartment about how I carve in a tiny apartment, but I never got around to it. I spent all winter building out this van to be a camper van so that we could do our 6-month trip around North America. 1 month into that trip right now, and we are stuck in California up in the Sierra Nevadas, which isn't the worst place to be. So what I thought it would be good to do is to show everyone how I have been wood carving in the van, because I was always going to make a video on that. It's probably going to be a bit more travel orientated, but I guess you get what you get. So I'm going to talk about the things I have with me, how I actually carve in the van, and some of the projects that I've actually managed to finish on my way. So first of all, the storage. The most important thing I've found with having a tiny space, keeping things clean and tidy. Keeping your space tidy is my #1 tip. In here, right next to the bed, we have all of the important stuff. All the important stuff should go right next to the bed in the van. In here, I have my tool rolls. This one's palm tools and knives. This one's my larger chisels. I have the knives that I'm constantly using, which is my Orford knife and my Drake knife currently. I have marking tools, pencils, knives, rulers, calipers, stuff like that. Diary for making templates. Files. Strop, never be without your strop. Blanks that I'm working on right now, and safety tape so I don't cut my fingers. Kim was pretty generous and she gave me a bit more space, so I've got this drawer down here which is nicely magnetized so nothing falls out while we're actually driving. I've got a hell of a lot of stuff actually. I'm not actually really traveling light here, as you could probably see even from that drawer. I've got basically all my tools that I would have had back in the apartment crammed into the van in some way or another. I've got a Dremel and Dremel bits, glues and finishes. Some of these didn't handle one night. We had minus 17 degrees Celsius. I'll have to figure out what that is in Fahrenheit and stick it somewhere on the screen here. Some of them may have frozen and then defrosted, but they seem to be doing okay. This box has all my finishing supplies like paint and cord, cloths, and some shellac to ready to mix up and stuff like that. This box has both my sharpening stones and just a boatload of sandpaper. Well, I guess a van load of sandpaper. Now the only thing I couldn't figure out where to put was my saws. So they went in with my clothes because why not? At least they're in plastic cases, right? Let me know if you do want me to do a full breakdown on this toolkit, because it is something I could do in the future. Definitely not in this video though, because it's way too much to cover. So that's all the tools, but we still need some wood, so that's hiding in the back here. This big tub, so I cut off a lot of stuff before I left in my mate's bandsaw. Alright, so in here I've got a bench hook, a handy thing that I can just whack onto a picnic table and use with my saws. Got some pre-cut blanks, so it's going to work on a squirrel. A bunch of nice little bits of wood to make pendants and stuff like that. A bunch of blanks for making different Pokemon, mostly cherry and butternut and stuff like that. And then lots of different basswood and walnut and cherry and all the wood that I had lying around the apartment that I wanted to cut up and make into something. So the real question of how to wood carve in a van, and my real answer to this is just don't. Just sit outside and do it outside in the great outdoors. This way you're making all your mess. It's just wood falling anyway, so no one's going to really care. But when you have to, you're going to have to sit inside your van. So here's the tips that I have. So I'm a firm advocate that the floor is comfy, so I just lean against the bed. And Kim's normally lying on the bed, so that's a good use of space because I'm a bit big for the van anyway. Basically what you want to do is you want to find a container or something that you can just rest your arms into and chip away into. And I found this was good for the apartment as well. It doesn't work when you're sawing. Do all your sawing outside. It's a bloody mess. Sanding as well is something that I try and do outside. Sometimes I'll use my little stool if I don't want to sit on the floor, and I'll move the stuff from underneath here and I'll rest up here. Of course, yes, most of your chips are going to end up in your container, but not all of them are. Some of them are going to go flying everywhere, so make sure you sweep up. I shake these mats out really often and I sweep up every day because keeping it clean is pretty important. If I'm low on light in the evening, I have LEDs, which are pretty awesome, which I installed, which are nice. I've got them along here and then along the bed in the back as well. They provide quite a lot of light. Another thing to consider is getting yourself a head torch. It's not actually a dumb thing. It keeps your hands free and makes sure that you always have light where your eyes are looking. It does look a little bit silly, but if it gets the job done, then who's going to question you? The main thing I've had problems with in the van is finishing, and I've been trying to do this at friends' houses or when I'm definitely not going to be moving the van for a couple of days. When I put finish on that piece, I don't want to touch it at all for a couple of days. And the dust-free part is pretty hard in the van because as much as you clean up, it is such a small space. So as you can see, it's not actually as hard as it looks to get quite a bit done in this tiny space. Yes, I'm making the most of my opportunities when I'm at friends' places. When I was in LA recently, before the shit hit the fan with the coronavirus, I made sure to use my friend's bandsaw to process up a whole lot of stuff and get some blanks underway, which I wouldn't otherwise be able to do in the van. It would take me about 5 hours to do something as opposed to 5 minutes. So it's about finding your opportunities when you have them and making the most of what you've got. Here are some of the pieces I've finished since leaving on my trip. I haven't made any videos of these. It's been pretty tricky to film, and some of them have actually already left my hands. This Vulpix is carved from cherry. The tails were carved as a separate piece and then joined with a small pin. Pretty complicated one, but I'm pretty happy with how it came out, especially for having carved the whole thing in the van. I also finished making another thread as well on the road. Now for the more ridiculous side, my friend that I mentioned in LA, who's Kate from Bow and Harrow Workshop, we collaborated to make these diglets. This kind of started off as a joke, but then turned into something completely overkill. They were turned by Kate from walnut, and then we fitted them into these overkill Buckeye Bill maple bases, and then I carved in the eyes and some purple heart noses. So I hope you find this somewhat interesting, maybe inspirational. See what you can do with your own space. You don't have to be limited by not having enough space to have power tools, or not having the right tools or the right wood or all that sort of stuff. I know I've got a lot of stuff in here, but I've worked up to that. I think right now, especially because we're so stuck in one place, everyone's being isolated, it would be good for everyone to think about how they can be creative and get some freedom from that creativity. I know that certainly empowers me and sort of getting me through these tough times that everyone's going through. It's being able to sit down, work on a carving and just get through it. What I'd love to hear in the comments from you guys is a bit of community. What are you working on? What are you creating? What are you carving? I want to hear what your lockdown projects are. Talk about that in the comments. I'll be down there chatting too. It'd be great to hear from you guys. Make sure to push those like and subscribe buttons. Keep washing your hands, all that shit. And see you guys in the next one.